easier to say it's about the marriage. Well, this marriage, because it's almost like impersonal. I'm putting it on the marriage rather than on me. And so I think it's beautiful to be able to separate and bring you in as individuals. And then it's like, okay, what's on you? Because when we can start dealing with that, it will automatically overflow into your marriage.
I'm Natalie Tysdal, a journalist who decided enough is enough. I left a career that looked glamorous to do what I was scared of doing, going out on my own. I'm a married working mom of 3. On this podcast, we're going to talk about issues that really matter. Why am I not sleeping? What's up with that diet everyone's talking about? Are my kids falling behind? How do I leave that job and start over? Welcome to the Natalie Tysdal podcast. I'm so glad you're here. Hi, everyone. It's Natalie. For my married couples out there, who's with me on this? Marriage is hard. Anyone who says otherwise probably isn't being honest. Relationships can be very hard. So we're human. We let things get in the way. And sometimes, and I admit this, we prioritize the wrong things. Today's guest on the podcast is an expert on relationships and personal growth. And we're talking about helping ourselves so we can help our relationships. I promise this episode will help you and it will help your relationships. If you've been listening weekly, you're going to remember Debra Fileta from episode 147, where we talked about faith and therapy. You might want to go back and listen to it, as it was a powerful 20 minutes. Debra is a licensed professional counselor, a national speaker, and author. And in our conversation, she emphasizes the importance of individual healing before diving into marriage counseling. She's going to shed light on how past wounds can unknowingly impact our current relationships and create a cycle of unresolved issues. By the end of this episode today, you're going to walk away with actionable tips for prioritizing what really matters in your relationships. So whether you're single, maybe you're dating, or if you're married for a short time or for a long time, this conversation is packed with those valuable insights for anyone looking to build stronger, healthier relationships. Before we get started, I hope that you will hit the subscribe button so you'll get updates when new interviews come out. And be sure to join me online at natalietysdal.com. Let's get started today with relationship expert Debra Fileta. Debra, thanks for coming back on the podcast. We talked last time that you were on about knowing when you need counseling and the importance of finding a faith-based counselor. But I want to talk today specifically because I know you spend a lot of time with couples and helping our relationships, and how you're doing that and advice that you have for people. Everybody hits stumbling blocks, right?
Yeah. It's funny. You know, I'm the type of counselor who, on my podcast for the month of February, Valentine's, when everyone else is talking about like fun date night strategies and, you know, how to spice up your marriage, I'm out here doing a live on air couples counseling with, you know, couples who are coming on and just talking about the hard things. I don't want to sugarcoat it. You know, relationships are hard. Relationships are the mirror that God uses to reveal our wounds and our weaknesses. And so we get into relationships and all of a sudden our wounds and weaknesses start to come to the surface, the worst of us. And we're like, the problem is you. You're bringing out the worst in me, right? When really God in his mercy is allowing you to see the worst in you that has been hibernating your whole life so that you can start to heal it.
Yeah.
So a healthy marriage is really an invitation to heal. Conflict is an invitation to heal. And so that's why I love this stuff. Even on couples therapy, some people are like, you're crazy. I can't believe you have these couples call in and you have no idea what they're going to talk about. It could be an affair. It could be addiction. It could be anything. And I really don't know. I mean, they come on the show. I'm like, hey, what's going on? But I love it because to me, it's an invitation. God reveals what he's willing to heal. And so it's like when he brings stuff up, it's a blessing because now we have the opportunity to heal. And so that's kind of how I view marriage counseling in general. It's two people coming together, acknowledging their junk, their baggage, their weaknesses, their woundings, and inviting the process of healing. And when you begin to get healthy as an individual, guess what? It overflows into your relationships. And so that's the beauty of it.
How important is it for people to get, as you just mentioned, that help as an individual before they show up for marriage counseling? Because it takes something just to get there, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And it really depends on the individual's personal health and journey, their trauma history, their emotional health, their mental health. So oftentimes what I will do when I have a couple that comes in for counseling is we'll have a first appointment together as a couple and kind of talk through what's going on and the conflict cycle that's coming up and what each person adds to that conflict cycle. And then as we move forward, I'll separate them and do individual work with her, individual work with him, and then bring them back together every so often to kind of see where we're at. So I think sometimes couples work alone can mask our need for individual healing because now it's about the marriage problem instead of about me and my problem, my reaction, my triggers, my woundings, my insecurities.
Yeah.
It's like, it's easier to say it's about the marriage. Well, this marriage, because it's almost like impersonal. I'm putting it on the marriage rather than on me.
Yeah.
And so I think it's beautiful to be able to separate and bring you in as individuals. And then it's like, okay, what's on you? Because when we can start dealing with that, it will automatically overflow into your marriage.
Yeah. How often are you finding people see their own issues versus you having to say, you realize you're being this way? I mean, does it come out? Do people go, oh, wow. Yeah, I guess I didn't know I was like that. Or did you have to call them out?
Most of the time, it's helping them realize something they would have missed. For example, I was in a session with a husband and wife, and she was saying, he always lets me down. I can never trust him. Whenever I tell him something I need, he never follows through. And I was like, do you realize how often you say extreme words like always and never, and I'm always like this, I never feel supported? That can't be completely honest. You can't have 100% track record, and neither can he. Have you ever noticed that you're really extreme? You're very black or white in your thinking and your processing and how you see the world. It's like, I never thought about that. I never realized that I'm very extreme. And so then for the next couple of sessions, whenever she would say those words, she would catch herself like, okay, there I go again. Okay, it's not always, you don't always do this, but when you do, this is what I feel. So it's little things like that you're so familiar with. Here's the problem. We often get so familiar with what we're used to that we don't even notice it anymore. It just becomes this behind the scenes, on the back burner, without us even realizing that we're doing it. I have 4 kids, and sometimes I'll hop in my car to take a trip to Target. Target is a therapist's therapy. Okay.
Like, and you're not getting paid by Target, but I agree with you.
I am not getting paid by Target. Take a little break, go walk around a store, any store, even the grocery store.
I know.
But it's funny because on my way to wherever I'm going, my kids love there's certain kids' music, and I can have the kids' music on for 20 minutes without realizing, oh my goodness, why am I listening to their music when I could have been listening to my own? Like I could have been listening to a podcast. Yes. I could have been listening to Maverick City music. It's because I am so familiar that I tune it out. And we do the same thing with our patterns, with our behaviors, with our cycles. We're so familiar with them that we don't even recognize them anymore. We just tune them out. And it sometimes takes somebody to say, have you noticed this? Have you paid attention to this? To bring it to our attention for us to recognize, wait a second, I do need to take ownership of that. That
Yeah.
is unhealthy. And
Yeah.
it's been playing on the back burner of my life because it's so familiar. It's so much easier for us to choose what is familiar over what's healthy.
Yeah.
And sometimes the patterns we've had are things we've been doing since childhood.
Mm-hmm.
For example, the woman who is a fixer, she just wants to please everybody and fix everything and bring peace because she came from a family that was chaotic and her role was to fix and make peace and make sure everybody was okay. And here she is in her marriage, making sure everybody is okay and everything is as it should be, except for herself.
Mm.
But she doesn't even realize she's doing it because she's been living this way for so long.
Yeah.
And so this is where I say that marriage and relationships are a mirror, but they also invite us to deeper healing.
Yeah. Give me some more of those. So I relate and I know other people listening going, oh, that's so me. What are some other popular issues? I hesitate to use the word popular, but things, the fixer, the person
Yeah.
who's not saying, give me some more of those that people might relate to realize I could use some help.
Well, I think of another couple that I worked with and I had on couples therapy, our couples therapy episodes. The podcast is called Talk to Me, the Debra Fileta podcast, but we do this series in February with couples. And I think of a couple from last year who she felt neglected by him. She felt like he wasn't emotionally investing. He wasn't giving her enough attention. He wasn't giving her enough emotional connection.
Mm-hmm.
And he was working hard. He was kind of on the workaholic scale, trying hard to provide for his family because that was his version of showing love. If I provide for you,
Mm-hmm.
I'm taking care of you. But she wanted to be taken care of in a different way. She wanted to be taken care of emotionally with his presence, with his attention, with his connection. So they're just missing each other and triggering each other. Whenever he would work hard, she would feel neglected. And whenever she was neglected, she would tell him that she's disappointed. And guess what? That would make him feel terrible. It would make him feel like he's not good enough for her. And then he would feel terrible, which would then make him want to work harder.
Mm-hmm.
And the cycle just continued. So we had to stop and start assessing their patterns. Like, where is this coming from? And how long have you been doing this? And not just assessing what they're doing in the present, but realizing that a lot of this comes from their past. She comes from a family where there was a lot of emotional neglect. She wasn't paid attention to as a child, and she worked really hard to be a straight A student, to be in every sport and to do amazing at everything she did. But no matter how hard she worked, she never got the affirmation she needed. Her parents were just too busy and uninterested. They were unavailable to her. So she felt neglect her whole childhood, which then creates a sensitivity, a sore spot.
Yeah.
And anytime she felt just a hint of that in her marriage, she was not only reacting to the emotional disconnect from her husband, she was also reacting to 25 years of emotional needs that had gone unmet.
Yeah.
And that's not fair to him.
Right.
To take responsibility for those 25 years before him. And so sometimes we come into marriage with wounds that we've carried with us from the past.
Yeah.
Our partner, maybe they didn't cause those wounds, but they can certainly push up on those wounds, press up against them, and cause us to react.
Yeah.
And this is where the conflict cycle ends up happening. It's all of this stuff we're bringing in and we don't even realize where it's coming from.
Yeah. And giving up on a marriage from something that might be like that. That's why those cycles continue, right? In the next relationship.
Exactly. Because we haven't actually healed the wound.
Yeah.
And so much of marriage work is exposing our wounds, and it's not comfortable. But it is so fulfilling and healthy. And it's like iron sharpens iron. It's like sandpaper. I mean, every time I feel triggered by my husband, I get an opportunity to stop and address my wounds. That doesn't mean he doesn't have any responsibility. My husband still has responsibility, but I have the responsibility of healing the wound while he has the responsibility of being careful with my wounds.
Yes.
And so there's a dual responsibility there, but he wouldn't have to be as careful with my wounds if I would heal my wounds.
Yes.
And so that's where individual healing is so important.
Are you looking for ways to stay energized, healthy, and help your family stay healthy? I've started taking supplements from Seeking Health, and it has changed the game for me. I no longer worry that my family is getting enough of the vitamins we need, and I know the quality of what we're taking is top notch. I take an immunity support supplement, magnesium, and several others, including electrolytes to stay hydrated. So many people ask me about these supplements that I've made it really easy for you to find right on my website, natalietysdal.com/favorites. Also, bonus, I have a coupon code to help you save 10% on your order. You will find that coupon code on the website as well. Go to natalietysdal.com/favorites. Click on Seeking Health. I may earn a small commission if you purchase there, but that's just to help my small business grow, the website and the podcast, to keep this news and good interviews coming your way. Again, natalietysdal.com/favorites and click on Seeking Health. You talk about that mirror, and one thing you just said made me realize, like, when you're triggered, to stop before you bite back,
right,
and say, wait a minute, why was I triggered by that?
Exactly. Why am I having such an extreme emotional reaction to this statement?
Right.
What's going on? What am I believing about myself? Am I really believing I'm not good enough? Am I believing he doesn't love me? Am I believing something bad is going to happen? Am I believing, there's something wrong with my body? What am I believing, and where does it come from? And how can I begin to heal those places?
That can be really tough if you stop, especially the heat of the moment, right?
Yeah.
When you're arguing. I mean, the worst time to argue is when everybody's heated, like try to walk away, but then there's madness in trying to walk away. But that can be really tough to stop and say, I don't know why. Some people might not know why they're triggered by that. And that's that individual therapy, right?
Right. Yeah.
I have no idea why that triggered me.
And this is also where counseling comes in handy, because it can teach you how to de-escalate, how to pause, how to disengage in those moments when you're feeling triggered, how to calm your own body and mind in those moments. It can kind of give you a roadmap so that you can learn how to do it in those moments and then start to do the work. Because otherwise you just do what you've always done.
Totally.
And the cycle just continues until you feel like there's no hope.
Yeah. Yeah. How much of couples therapy and relationships are the theory of I give what I need? So, the 5 love languages, we joke about that in my family a lot. It's like my husband knows that if he does a whole lot of work, I'm going to feel really loved. So he likes to do the dishes and help me with the laundry and all of those things. He's like, I know that those acts of service really make you feel loved. Do you believe in that theory?
To give somebody else what they need?
So going back, saying I need more physical touch, so I'm going to give that, but that's not really what my husband needs.
Right. Well, I guess my theory would be ask for what you need and give the other person what they need.
Yeah.
Rather than give what you need. I think it's important to be honest about what you need and just share. Open communication. It would really mean a lot to me to have more physical touch. It would really mean a lot to me to have more service, because if we give what we need, we're not always in tune to what people around us need. And what we need might not be the answer for everybody else, because we have our personal stories. We have our personal baggage. We have our trauma. We have our unhealthy narratives and beliefs that we need. So my husband might need words of affirmation. I don't need that as much, but here's what I do need. And so if we're just giving what we need, we're missing each other versus giving what they need, but then sharing what we need. And so it's important to be honest.
That's having that conversation and actually knowing, and that communication goes back to the communication element of, I'm going to tell you what I need. But sometimes doesn't it feel, or do you find that people don't really know that's what they need?
Well, that's the important work is you cannot just play the guessing game. You have to get to know yourself first and foremost. I wrote a dating book for singles. My very first book is called True Love Dates, and the very first section is about dating inward, because you don't know who
Mm.
matches your life and what you need until you know who you are. And
Yeah.
it follows us into marriage. If I don't know, how can I communicate to you
Mm.
what I need?
Yeah.
And then it becomes a guessing game for me, and even more of a guessing game for my partner. And that's frustrating.
Yeah.
So a big part of individual healing is to be able to look at what I bring to the table, what I need, my unique deficits, my weaknesses, my strengths, my narratives, and to be able to know that, to bring that to my spouse and say, hey, here's what would be so meaningful from you. I would really appreciate this. And to be able to be very specific about what we need. But you're right, some people are so out of touch with what they need because they've spent their life focusing on everybody else's needs. And
Yeah.
so this is where it takes some work.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I love what you're doing and listening to your podcast with couples, because in some way we all relate to that, and hearing people be very raw about their needs. What else do you have coming up? I know you do workshops and your podcast, and you writing any new books?
Yeah, I have a few things around the corner. So my last book was called Reset. And I mentioned it on one of your episodes. It came out this past year, and it's still kind of brand new. It hasn't even celebrated 1 year yet.
Mm.
And it's a book about really learning to own your thoughts, understand your feelings, and change your life, essentially, because it starts with what's going on underneath the surface. And even in our marriage, when there's things we want to change and heal, it's not just about healing the behavior. It's about getting underneath the surface.
Yeah.
And so it's a book that will really help you get underneath the surface. There's a whole chapter in there about triggers and what to do when you're triggered and how to handle them, and kind of talking you through step by step how to pursue emotional healing. And it's funny because it's not a marriage book, but I guarantee if you each take the time to do the reset, you will find your marriage at a completely different place, even though it's not a marriage book. Because if you take the time to do the individual work, it will overflow into your marriage. So it's a great place to start. We do monthly seminars every month about resetting a different area in your life. This last month, it was about resetting your sex life. This month, it's about resetting your inner critic. Sometimes we have reset your boundaries, reset all kinds of different areas. So each month we kind of focus in on an area, a specific area where somebody needs help. And we do a professional seminar on an evening during the month. And it's just been so special to see so many people come out to do the work of healing. I mean, think about it. It could be a Tuesday night, a Friday night, and there's a room full of a few hundred people wanting to do the work of healing. That shows me that things are changing in our culture. And it's just so exciting, because you could be watching Netflix, you could be doing anything else, but they choose to come and learn and heal. And so that's been so exciting to see. And, the next few years, I have a few different books coming out. I have 6 books that I have already written and a few more in the pipeline. So that's also really exciting just to see. I wish I could give a sneak peek of what's coming up, but it's a little too early. I have a book coming out in September that I'm so excited about. And I can't wait to share. And I guess the hint is it will teach you how to focus on filling up, especially for those of us who are in the role of constantly pouring out.
Oh, I'm excited for that. So I have to know, as a busy mom, I have 3. You've got 4 at home, and they're homeschooling, and you're writing, and you're doing workshops, and you're doing your podcast. I've got 2 at college, and I'm still struggling to keep up. So give people, for those moms listening, like, how do you do it all? How do you balance it?
Yeah, it's my favorite question, because I get asked a lot. And my answer is I don't do it all. I really don't. I try very hard not to do it all. And I do the few things that God has called me to do. I work 2.5 days a week. I am with my kids most of the time. And I have learned to say no to so many things. So smaller circles of friends, smaller commitments to my kids' activities. Like they don't do a million things because we don't have the luxury of being able to do a million things. We can do the few things that God has called us to do. And that's kind of what we focus on and prioritize. So we say no to a whole lot of things and kind of focus in on what God has called us to do. And even when amazing opportunities come up, I have to say no to a lot of those because I can't do it all.
Yeah.
But what's amazing is I have watched God just, I think about when I was a mother of my first book. I was writing my first book while I had a 20-month-old and a newborn. All I had was nap time and bedtime. So during naps, I would get my laptop out and I would write. And of course, I'm a mom with boundaries, so my kids always had a nap. I mean, that was like non-negotiable.
Yep.
But I would write during nap time and bedtime. And God took those little loaves and fish that I had. This is all I have, Lord. And he multiplied it. And he still does. Like I look at, like you just listed all these things. And even in my mind, I'm like, that sounds like a lot. But when I look at the little that I have given him and I see what he's done with it, I have been faithful to give him the little that I have, 100% of the little bit that I have. And he has been faithful in multiplying it to feed multitudes in a way that I never could have done. Absolutely never. And I look at, and I say, all glory to him, because he takes the little bit that we have and he multiplies it. So even if my little bit is 30 minutes today, I'm going to be faithful with what God has called me to do.
Yeah.
And watch him do his thing. So that's my advice is to be faithful with the little that you have and ultimately be faithful to what God has called you to do and not what everybody else thinks you should be doing.
And we are such a culture that we think more is better, and the hustle and the take it on and take everyone else's stuff and get our kids involved in more in competition. And I love what you just said in that advice as I'm like looking across my desk at my to-do list. And it's like all of that just eats at me.
Yeah.
And I have to put it aside and say, okay, God, what are you calling me to right now that I can focus on?
Right.
And I think that's really beautiful. I still don't know how you write with so many kids in the house.
Yeah, writing comes easy to me. I'm grateful for that. I've always been a writer. And I set aside, I put it in my schedule. Like, so practically speaking, my Wednesdays are when I work. Wednesdays are my client days. Mondays are my creating days. And so whether it's creating podcasts or whether it's writing, depending on the season, right now I'm in creating season. So I've been recording a lot of podcasts, but once I get into writing mode, those Mondays will get blocked out.
Yep.
And there'll be an 8-hour chunk there that I have to commit to writing. And so I really try to block out my schedule and prioritize and not let anything infiltrate those sacred writing sessions.
Yeah. I think that's great advice, just very practically too, is to have categories of this time is only for this.
Right.
Everything else goes away. And we think, especially as women, we think we are such good multitaskers. I can do all of these things and do them all at the same time and do them well. And the fact is we don't do them well.
Right. That's the truth. So it's just a matter of kind of focusing in and compartmentalizing and saying a whole lot of no to everything I'm not called to do.
Yeah. Debra, thanks for your time and for making this a priority and giving me just everything here in this podcast. And I enjoy it so much. Continue to follow you. I'm excited for your new book.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
It was a good tease with it. I'm going to be thinking about that. And I'll be sure and put links in the show notes for anyone who wants to get in contact with you and follow you on social media.
Sounds good. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Take care.
Take care.
Thank you for joining the Natalie Tysdal podcast. You can follow along on Instagram and at natalietysdal.com. Subscribe to the show to catch every new episode and leave a review so I can continue to bring you fresh content. See you next week.